Why specifically chemical and biochemical engineering? What was the reason for that passion?
Again, I don't know how.
I know the story.
Yeah, you know the story, and I can't tell the audiences a different story. I need to be honest.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the implications of the energy transition in the Middle East for the global economy in general, energy security, and the environmental sustainability? The role of the Middle East in the oil market, how important is it? Let's say we run out of fossil fuels in countries. What will be the economical effect on it?
Yeah, we are just stopping our bloodstream.
Mm-hmm.
The economy, and not only the economy, but entire life will stop so soon.
Welcome back. Hussein with you today. This is podcast Athar, where we follow trials of success. Today, we unravel the intricate web of geopolitics, economics, and resource distribution that will shape the future of the Middle East soon. And with that, we have Dr. Kim from Qatar University. Dr. Kim, we're glad to have you with us today. Please introduce us more about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me here. My name is Donghyun Kim. I'm an assistant professor in chemical engineering department of Qatar University. And probably that's it related to today's topic.
Mm-hmm. And regarding your profession itself, can you provide us with an overview of your academic and professional career over the past few years?
Well, I graduated from I majored chemical engineering in undergraduate, and also did my master's and PhDs. Well, actually, master's and PhDs of mine is integrated, so I directly into the PhD of chemical engineering. And after graduation, I worked in Saudi Arabia, KFAPM, King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals, for nearly 2 years, and then moved to Qatar University. So right after my graduation from PhD, I started my professional career as an assistant professor.
And of course, the viewers don't know this, but you were my professor in one of the courses. And you told us about your semester abroad in one of the universities. So can you tell us more about that experience as well?
By the time in Qatar University. Well, it was really interesting to me because even though Saudi and Qatar is neighboring countries, my interactions with the students were dramatically different. I felt like Qatar University, or Qatar in general, is more heterogeneous. And every time I go to the class, I find every batch of students are really different. So I feel like it's more dynamic, and in terms of cultural experiences, it's more diverse.
And I remember you told me that you had a semester study abroad during your college study as well in Denmark, I think.
Yes.
How was that experience for you?
I don't know how much I can be honest with this, but going abroad as an exchange student, in Denmark was the best decision I've ever made in the university, in my undergraduate life. So I was literally thrown into a completely new environment for the first time in my life. And I opened up to a very new stuff of a culture outside of my comfort zone, and also to myself as well. So it was a very short journey to figure out more about myself. And I regret that I didn't extend my stay in Denmark for one more semester.
So if you were given the choice one more time, you would have definitely
Definitely.
Yes. That's nice. So why specifically chemical and biochemical engineering? What was the reason for that passion?
Again, I don't know how.
I know the story.
Yeah, you know the story, and I can't tell the audiences a different story. I need to be honest. Back in my university in Korea, when you just got entered, you don't decide on your major. So you have a what did I say?
Preparatory year, I think.
Something like that. Yeah. You don't have anything in your hand, but you just go through the fundamental courses, including chemistry, physics, calculus, basic level computer programming languages, and you just whatever you choose for either for science or engineering, you have to go through those fundamental courses. So we are spending 1 full year to just explore. And from the high school, I always liked chemistry. And even after I spent my entire year in the university, I didn't tell the difference between chemistry and the chemical engineering. And something with engineering sounded fancier.
Yes.
And biomolecular is just sort of an addition to chemical engineering by that time, because back in Korea, chemical engineering was not very, trending at that time. But we are expanding the chemical engineering, all the other stuff of engineering disciplines were kind of expanding to biomedical applications and nanotechnology. It was about more than 10 years ago. And still, biomedical engineering, biomedical applications, and nanotechnologies are still important. So by that time, the people in the chemical engineering just grabbed the biomolecular and added to the department. As a consequence, number of students who enrolled the department dramatically increased.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, but I don't know. This is
and throughout this whole process, what can we say are some of the skills that you were able to pick up through your entire journey of specifically engineering? Because we know with engineering, this comes what we call it as an engineer complex, right? We have this confidence in how we think and how we roll with things. So what are some of the skills that you gained throughout?
What are the skills? Well, I'd say in my undergraduate level, more about defining the problems. So everybody could say, there is a problem, this is the problem, that's an issue. But it's recognizing one is a bit different from defining the problem. So defining means the limitations, the scope and the boundaries. So how you shape your question raises the possibility to get a better answer. So at my very undergraduate studies, undergraduate level, I learned about how to ask a proper question, and taking one step further, how to define the problem.
Getting into the main topic in this episode, chemical and biomolecular engineering.
Okay.
So I wanted to know what are some recent developments or trends in biomolecular engineering that have caught your attention recently.
By the way, coffee is really good.
That's nice. So this is actually our sponsor. This is Green Bay. I think before the episode started, you ordered V60, and I ordered V60 as well. This is their forest grape flavor. They have these rare flavors, and it's supposed to have a fruity hint to it. And it's from Colombia. It's pretty nice.
Indeed, it is.
Yeah. I was surprised when I had like a sip before we start as well. Back to our question regarding the research and the development in chemical and biomolecular engineering. What are some trends that caught your attention?
Oh yeah, let me just mention two things briefly. One thing is about system biology, It's basically an implementation of a chemical plants into the world of biology. One of the professors in our department back in Korea, he is he's actually almost the founding member of that field.
Wow.
So the idea is they genetically modify the entire map of a E. coli. E. coli is basically a microorganism.
Microorganisms, yes.
And they tweak the metabolic pathway inside to let it produce a desired chemicals. So converting the fossil fuel based classic chemical engineering plants into the biology based ones. And having a full understanding of and a control of a metabolic pathway was literally a surprising one. And ultimately what they want is by feeding the carbohydrates, not the fossil fuels, but the normal easily accessible food other than the fossil fuels to the microbes. And then they want to get but chemicals and polymers that was able to be produced from the fossil fuels. So it's a replacement of classical chemical plants. And that approach has been applied to many other sectors using different microbes. So, and that's what we call system biology. And the other one is a recent advancements in the lab on a chip. Basically, we make the lab into very small scale so that we can save chemicals, we can save space, we can save labor forces, and make it easier to automate the experimental sequence. That is called lab on a chip. And it has many applications. You can mimic the chemical reactions and biological based reactions as well. But probably the most common application is in biomedical field. So you can mimic the biosystems happening in our body, like blood circulations or antibody reactions, and testing the vaccines as well. They can recreate the similar circumstances, similar environments as our body in a small chip, in a very narrow channel engraved on this small chip. And chemical engineers usually has a good understanding of fluid mechanics, fluid dynamics, and also the property of the materials like polymers. So they are the ones who synthesize the chips and designed experiments on such a small scale. We also have a nanotechnology and advancements related to the material developments, but so far,
majorly, it's the advancements from.
This is just my personal opinion. I can't address the entire field of chemical engineering.
Yeah, of course.
But those two sectors caught my attention recently.
And considering the research path that you're taking, what is a recent research that you are doing and working on, and what are the projects that you worked on before as well? Some of them.
Previously, I was participating in a large government funded research project that has been performed for 10 years back in Korea. And that was basically a microalgae based biorefinery stuff. What is microalgae and biorefinery? So somewhat similar to the system biology. We want to get rid of the fossil fuels, basically. and we want some carbon neutral alternatives to that. So instead of using the fossil fuels as a raw material, we grow microalgae, which is a very small cells, photosynthesis, capable of photosynthesis. We grow the microalgae in a massive scale and try to extract desired products such as lipids, carbohydrates, and proteins and small pigments, so that we can have a good utilization of those raw materials. Why microalgae then? Those are basically capable of photosynthesis, just like plants. So they captures around more than 50% of the total carbon dioxide on this planet. Their role in the ecosystem is so important.
It's a significant role.
Yeah. We are not just grabbing the natural microalgae from the system, from the planet. We are growing them in a more controlled way, and then induce a desired and final products by adjusting the environments or even the genetic modification as well. That was the overview of the project I participated for over 6 years. And then after I joined here at Qatar University, I'm leading one research project related to the microalgae as well, but using microalgae for treating the wastewater, basically an oily wastewater. So they can both be wastewater treatment. What did I say? Cleaners for the wastewater, and at the same time become a good source of biomass.
Students that are interested in pursuing this as a career, do you have an advice for them
in this career? Well, it all depends where you're from. It all depends where you are studying. Some people think, even though they are chemical engineering students, some people they are thinking, is chemical engineering all about oil and gas, or the refinery of those stuff, or making polymers out of the fossil fuels? And universities, colleges in all over the world has a different emphasis on the discipline, because chemical engineering is really, really broad discipline, and depending on the regional importance, they emphasize different things, and the student's viewpoint is kind of limited. Well, I'd say myself was a good example of it. As you can imagine from our department's name in my previous school, chemical and biomolecular. We put a lot of stress on biomolecular stuff. And I didn't really understand the classic discipline of chemical engineering, but I joined Saudi Arabia and the Qatar. What I figured out is this is more classical disciplines of chemical engineering. So, and what they teach to their students is somehow very different. So
it focuses more on the oil and gas part.
Yes.
In comparison to Korea, where they focus on biomolecular.
To chemical engineering students, open up. And if I can go back 10 years back, and if there is any advice to myself, then I'd say, open up your eyes and look around more to see the boundaries. Probably you won't see the boundaries, but if there is something that doesn't attract you at the current curriculum, if some major subjects are not very interesting, don't get disappointed. Chemical engineering has a vast range of applications, so always try to find whatever interests you. Probably there is a good position for it, good place for you to fit in.
So, considering that we're in the Middle East, and as you mentioned, the chemical engineering sector majorly focuses on oil and oil refinery. There is the recent trend of energy shift. Majority of the world is trying to shift towards clean energy. Uh, we want to know, based on your experience, the role of the Middle East in the oil market. How important is it? And what are some key factors that are going to have an effect on the future of this market for the Middle East?
Well, infrastructure matters, first of all. And it just takes time. We've been developing the world's economy has been developed based on the fossil fuels for 100 years. And now we just understand how serious it is to continue in this rate. Population growth has been population growth dramatically in the last 100 years. And basically, we have too many people on Earth consuming too much energy, too much resources. But we can't eliminate people on this planet. We just try to figure out the sustainable way. We can't just
true.
We can't just
Snap
snap the fingers to swipe half of the people on a planet just like Thanos did. So and think about it, 7-8 billion people, they are all relying on the fossil fuels, and changing the infrastructure for all of them. We'll go through a long transition time. But the thing is, how much driving force we have, how much motivation we'll have to accelerate it. So that's the one thing. It's just a massive scale of infrastructure. And what is the challenges to the energy producing Middle Eastern countries? I can organize my answers by now. They are Middle Eastern countries, Saudis, Qatar, and UAE. They are all investing on the blue ammonia. Well, blue ammonia is basically a carrier for the blue hydrogen. So when people are talking about the hydrogen, the way they trade easily is to convert the blue hydrogen into a blue ammonia, and then they just import and export it using the very similar terminal, just like LNG, liquefied natural gas. So for now, people are trading hydrogen in that way. But in theory, and for now, it's good for the Middle Eastern countries for now, and for probably 10 to 20 years. But in theory, renewable energy are supposed to be decentralized, which means I don't have to go over again. Is that answer, like fossil fuel industry has been centralized in terms of energy distribution, represented by the Gulf countries. But if the technology and infrastructure has been developed, matured a bit more, to be practiced, to be used in all the countries globally, then the power systems, energy distribution will be way more decentralized, which means not all the people, not all the countries are going to rely on the energy producing countries. So that's going to be the challenge. So after you sell the blue ammonia,
what will happen
to the demanding countries? What will happen?
And the thing about the Middle Eastern countries, they have water scarcity, right? And we wanted to know what is going to be the impact on something like this in the region, considering that there should be sustainable renewable energy, and water sources are one of the main sources to be able to utilize that. So how will the Middle East be able to work with the water scarcity they have as well?
Well, I think Gulf countries are doing well, especially Qatar is doing very well in that regard. The primary source of water is seawater. you desalinate them first. You use it for the primary purposes, drinking, daily use. And so there are primary usage of the fresh water, desalinated from seawater. Then you just dump them to the ground or back into the sea. You treat them in a wastewater treatment plants and then reuse them for the irrigations or less hygiene concerned applications. Try to minimize the amount of the discharged wastewater, and that concept is called zero liquid discharge, or minimal liquid discharge, and they are practicing it quite well. If we want to advance it a bit more, then maybe we can make the best use of the wasted stream from the desalination plants. To make the fresh water, 1 liter of fresh water, you have to intake 2 liter of seawater, make 1 liter of fresh water, and another 1 liter of concentrated twice saltier seawater back into the Arabian Gulf. And this highly concentrated seawaters is raising the salt level of the nearby sea. So when you are dealing with the continuous desalination process, you have to deal with the brine. We call this twice saltier solution as brine. You have to know how to manage the brine. You can just return it back to the sea. So what is the processing? What is the post-processing for these brines will be a remaining challenge for waters for Qatar in particular, and for Gulf countries in general, I guess.
And how do you see your major specifically helping in the implementation and the development of the energy transition process in the Middle East itself? Because according to my knowledge, some of the research that you're currently doing in QU and also in the university in Saudi Arabia was related to clean energy in a way. So how is your major helping in that?
Well, that's a broad question. I can name a lot of research ongoing in our department and the research center right next to our engineering building. The ultimate purpose of our research related to the energy, water, and the food. Have you ever heard of water, energy, food nexus?
No idea.
Okay. So those 3 components are the essentials for us to live. And we are trying to combine them together, energy, water, food, and we expect some synergetic effects of constructing a system that incorporates efficient management of 3 sources altogether. For instance, aquaponics. Have you ever heard of aquaponics?
Again, no. You need to remember you taught me one course was mechanical engineering.
Okay. So if you go to Carrefour in the city center, there's a huge section where you can find a lot of plants, vegetables grown in the aquaponics system.
Oh, I understand what you mean. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
It's one good demonstration of a combined good management of water and food. So basically, you grow a fish, and the fish poops. They are making the water dirty, but their poops has a lot of ammonia and phosphorus contents, which is very beneficial for the plants. So what do they do? You use the fish poop containing water to grow the plants. And then the plants don't think about it dirty thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a good fertilizer for the plants. So the plants grow as well. And the water is being purified because they are taking all the nitrogen and phosphorus sources, which are major concerns in the aquarium. So you grow both fish and plants, minimizing the water usage. Conceptually, yes, it's easy, but to adjust and optimize the parameters related to the system performance, there are a lot of things to do, from the chemical, from the water, from the agriculture, and even for the biologists as well, agricultural engineering as well. But from chemical engineering's viewpoint, we design the system and we always take care about the mass balance to maintain the performance of the system in a stable way, making it continuous.
Okay. So, what are some of the implications of the energy transition in the Middle East for the global economy in general, energy security, and the environmental sustainability? Is the Middle East putting effort towards the global realm in general to aid in the sector or not?
They are already wants to provide energies to all over the world. But your question might be after the transition.
After the transition, or in the transition itself that is happening, are they aiding in the transition process, or they are not really contributing much in the transition process? Because from what I have noticed in the university, at least, is that they are putting a lot of research into biofuels. So is this a move just from Qatar University, or is this a move from the Middle East region itself? How are they aiding towards the energy shift that is happening right now?
Aiding is not a proper phrase, I think.
Okay.
Not a proper expression. Energy transition happens all simultaneously. It's not driven by someone. It's not driven by some region or some people. Well, in some sense, yes. For instance, since after the Paris Agreement 2015, literally all the countries in the planet agreed to reduce the carbon emissions. And that's where all the radical transition started. And Middle Eastern countries are no exceptions. So even though they have plenty of oil and gas resources, they are installing a lot of solar panels. Qatar is no exception. Qatar has installed a lot of solar panels in the middle of the desert. And UAE is, especially the Abu Dhabi, they are making the largest solar farms in the region. I don't remember the name of it correctly, so I need to refer to the reference here. It is called Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park. It's the world's biggest, actually. And in some sense, yes, the Middle Eastern countries are contributing. Also, they are participating in this movement. And at the same time, they are still, even during the transition, fossil fuels are needed. Everybody's saying fossil fuels are evil stuff in terms of the carbon emissions. Just get rid of the evil stuff, bad things in the carbon emissions. But it's needed because of the nature of the renewable energy. Solar powers, wind powers especially, they are the representative two major sources of renewable energy. And their major drawbacks is not about the amount of the energy they produce, but intermittency of the production. PV cells, photovoltaic solar panels, they're only usable when there is a sunlight. So during the nighttime, you get zero power. Wind, there has to be a wind
Mhm.
to get the power out of it. So there's intermittency requires some intervention of the fossil fuels. So their role in the transition time, providing some supplementary power sources, alternative power sources alongside a solar and wind, is critical. So in that regard, yes, I could say Middle Eastern countries are contributing
Mhm.
on the transition. They are aiding
Mhm.
the transition of the of trans, energy transition by supplying the fossil fuels.
Mhm.
Ironically,
So the oil industry is big, right? And we want to know, how do you think the oil and gas industry in the Middle East can remain competitive in this rapidly changing energy landscape that we have right now?
apparently, the oil and gas industry's strategy is diversifying the production production categories, or what did I say? They were used to be extracting the oil and gas and sell them as a natural resources, as a raw material. But now they are building chemical companies, fertilizer companies, and try to deal with the refinery stuff as well. So adding more values on the raw materials. It's for the close short term. In a long term, using the using the massive amount of profits they have, revenues they are investing on the new energy sources. I think it's repetitive, it's redundant, but about hydrogen and the ammonia.
Mm.
So the hydrogen is expected to be the next fossil fuel.
Fossil fuel.
Yeah. So to survive in this rapidly changing market, the most promising way would be diversifying their production portfolio. One of the most good example, one of the very good example would be hydrogen, blue hydrogen, but ultimately green hydrogen.
Green hydrogen. And which renewable energy options do you think are most suitable for the Middle East, considering its resources and environment? And what technical challenges exist even though the environment are there?
What do you think?
Um, the only thing could be using with the water bodies that we have around, or maybe
Water bodies?
water bodies.
You mean the seawater?
Seawater,
Okay.
or maybe wind, but in the middle of the deserts.
Wind in the middle of the desert.
Mhm.
Why don't you mention about the solar?
Fair. And the solar panels.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and the solar panels as
I
well.
thought that the first answer
It would be
come out
solar
the
panels.
solar. Yeah. And as you can see, many ongoing projects are based on solar.
Mhm.
So, um, personally, I want to find more diverse option.
Mhm.
But apparently, solar panels are the the most practical one due to its scalability, which means you can install a very small unit. You can on your rooftop, or you can make a gigantic farm that is comparable to the fossil fuel power plants in the middle of the desert. And installing the solar panels in a massive scale isn't a huge problem as much as the other countries' circumstances, because there are rare species living on the middle of the desert. So yeah, as you mentioned, in the middle of the desert, solar or wind can be promising. So far, it's more the overall efforts has been skewed to the solar energy. Yeah, everybody can imagine. Middle East in the middle of a desert. Middle East rains not that much, and then always very sunny. So many people would think about it. Okay, installing solar panels would be the very good option.
And what about the option of biofuels?
Biofuels. Before we jump into that discussion, I'd like to wrap this part up. Solar panels. So, for instance, if you use even though it's not the Middle East, but let us just say MENA region, then if you just cover the 1/3 of the Sahara Desert with the PV cells, then it can power the entire world. So solar power is that much effective and that much powerful, but in a very ideal scenario. What are the drawbacks or the problems of the solar panels? In the middle of desert, it's quite dusty. So when the panel is covered with the dust sand, then the efficiency is not as much as expected. And at the same time, PVs are prone to heat.
So
they are utilizing the lights, not the heat.
Understood. Yeah.
So the efficiency drops so fast. So maybe the durability, the lifespan of the PV cells installed. Once they are deteriorated, then you have to reinstall them all again. So the cost matters, and what are you gonna do with the wasted PV cells, PV panels? We don't have a full data about the toxicity of the wasted PV cells to the ecosystems. And basically, the environment is somehow friendly to the PV cells in the Middle East, but at the same time, not very friendly as much as we imagine.
In a way, it's a bit extreme.
Yeah. It's extreme to us. It's extreme to the PV cells as well.
So let's say that the transition is sort of delayed. What is the role of chemical engineering in minimizing the emissions that come from oil and comes from fossil fuels in general?
You mean general engineering or the chemical engineering?
Chemical engineering. How does it minimize the emissions?
Well, we have a well-established solution for that. And all the blue ammonia produced in Qatar and in Saudi, there are two large blue ammonia plants in Qatar and the Saudi. Qatar's one, the plant number 7, is the largest blue ammonia production plants in the world, and they are using what we call absorption tower or the absorber. So CO2 in the flue gas is basically captured by the amine-based solution, let us say. So, and in theory, we can capture the CO2 by 99%. So, if you have a motivation, if you can justify the economic feasibility of those carbon capture units, we already have a solution. So chemical engineers are basically the designers for not only for the fossil fuel based refinery stuff or polymer production units, but also the CO2 capture units and the regeneration of the solutions used.
And will biofuels, which we talked about them earlier, be able to have a huge and large scale improvement as well for the energy transition, or is the main focus currently on blue ammonia and hydrogen, and you don't think biofuels can catch up to that level at any point?
Well, honestly, actually, blue ammonia are the ones which has to catch
With
the level of biofuels. What do you think about what comes in your mind when you hear about the renewable energy?
Renewable energy, we're going to start thinking of solar panels, windmills, water sources.
Those are fast-growing field, basically. Solar panels will grow 7 times by 2030, wind 4 times by 2030. So they grow really fastest in their kind. But if you take a look at the entire portfolio of the renewable energy, biofuel takes half of the entire production.
Oh.
Biofuel takes. And you may ask why. Why nobody talks about biofuel,
Biofuels that much, yeah.
but it's not the minority, it's the largest sector. How come? It can be related to the previous discussion we have. Energy transition takes time because of the infrastructure. And what do you think about, what comes in your mind the first when you hear about the fossil fuels?
CO emissions.
What kind?
What kind? We're going to talk petroleum.
Yeah.
Major
Gasoline, petroleum. And they are basically liquid.
True.
And biofuels, as the name states, those are the liquid. And the biofuels are primarily developed to be blended with the fossil fuels, which means they can use the existing infrastructure as it is. So the penetration of the biofuels into the existing fossil fuel-based infrastructure is somehow smooth.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So a lot of developing countries are using bioethanol as a substitute or the blend in drop-in oil to the gasoline, bioethanol. And advanced countries, developed countries, are expanding the application of biofuels into the aviation industry and the cargo industry. So you may ask another question, follow-up questions. Why don't we just use hydrogen or solar powers, basically the electricity, to all these stuff? Tesla introduced their first electric vehicles about more than 15 years ago. And a lot of major car manufacturers are producing the electric vehicles as well. And why do we still need biofuels? And why the advanced countries are not just electrifying everything, but still use them or even expanding the application of biofuels to aviations and cargos?
I think I was going to talk to you about this. Do you even think the electrical shift in the car industry is an environmental friendly shift? Because we know that they use lithium batteries, and we know the negative impact on with lithium on the environment. So, in comparison, are biofuels better than that shift and the electrical shift as well when it comes to cars?
Well, that's an interesting question. In terms of life cycle analysis, you've learned it already from the beginning to the end.
Yes.
From the raw material extraction to the end of life
product for the product. Yes.
From the beginning to the end. If we do the life cycle analysis, in terms of carbon emissions, electric vehicles are advantageous over the fossil fuel based vehicles, or even the biofuel vehicles that are using biofuels. They are advantageous, but at the same time, to store the electricity, a chunk battery is needed, and the battery requires lithium. So even though lithium-ion batteries has been there for a long time, but we never demanded in this massive scale. And extraction of the lithiums, processing of them, of course, it has its detrimental impacts on the environments. And we have never seen this massive scale of large-scale wasted lithium-ion batteries in our history yet. So it's hard to tell. So in theory, biofuel is somehow carbon neutral because the source of the biofuels are organic matters, plants, corns, sunflower, or even the microalgae. When we are growing them, they capture carbon dioxide, even though we just burn the fuels derived from them. The amount of the carbon emissions and the amount of carbon captured are kind of offset each other in theory. But also, it all depends on which route, which feedstocks, and which chemical conversion process you used. And it's it's very controversial. So I can't give you a clear cut yes or no answer. But it all depends on the routes.
It all depends on.
Yeah.
So I'll give you at the end two, let's say, theoretical questions. And the first one I wanted to ask you, so what is the financial and economic effect of, let's say we run out of fossil fuels in countries? What will be the economical effect on it?
All of a sudden?
All of a sudden.
Economic impact?
Economic impact. Would you rather talk about it from scientific impact?
A massive shortage in the daily supply, because all these stuff, well, you can name it in here, even including the plastic plants over there. And what else do we have? This table is basically coated with the animals, also the fossil fuel derived polymers. My frame of my glass and a lot of parts in the phone, in the car, a lot of things. But even before we are lack of the daily supplies, raw materials for the daily supplies, how can you drive the car?
True.
Yeah, we are not prepared for the electric vehicles yet fully, and even the majority of the electricity to power the electric cars are coming from the fossil fuels. So
at the end of the day, we cannot really separate ourselves.
It feels like it's gonna be like we are stopping the. No, it's not a good way to. Yeah, we are just stopping our bloodstream, the economy, and not only the economy but entire life will stop so soon. Massive inflation. Yeah, it's a post-apocalyptic world.
Europe in the winter as well. I mean,
we already kind of witnessed.
True.
Yeah.
So we can say that it's not possible, and it won't be possible anytime soon, for it to disappear all of a sudden. And that takes me to my other theoretical question, which is, do you think that there will ever be a day where we completely stop using fossil fuels and permanently let it go, or there will be a day where fossil fuels will run out?
Completely. That's what we are aiming for. And when I was a kid, when I was attending elementary school, teachers used to teach us, used to say that petroleum will disappear in this planet after 30 years. I don't know who suggested that theory at the beginning. After 30 years. And I still remember vividly, one day in my graduate school, that the US announced that they will extract the shale gas and oil. And it was a huge change, huge shock in the energy market. The US has become the largest producer of the energy. And by the estimation, we have more than 200, nearly 200 equivalent amount of the fossil fuels. Plentiful fossil fuels. Who said 30 years, 40 years is the end of the life? 200, and it's expected to expand a bit more. Not a bit more, massively more.
Massively more.
So it all mattered about the economic feasibility mattered at the time. So when we say about the lifetime of the fossil fuels, it usually say how more fossil fuels, how more gas and oil we can extract in an economically feasible cost.
And do you think will we ever run out of fossil fuels?
Someday, Someday, but not in my lifetime, I guess.
Okay.
Already not in my lifetime.
We're lucky.
But ultimately, we are heading towards to a full decarbonization, and I believe 100% is an exaggeration, but I can't tell the number exactly. But I'm advocating for that movement.
And you think that we will have the chance to reach green energy supply before fossil fuels run out?
That's what it's supposed to be. Again, it's what it's supposed to be, and I think it's doable.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's doable. Yes.
Okay. We hope it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, a change like this will most probably not happen in our time, considering the numbers that you gave. But we do hope to see the change and the process happening gradually.
Yeah.
And by this, our episode reaches an end, hoping it was fun and light for all of you. And we thank Dr. Kim for being a part of this episode and helping us make it a successful one, hopefully. And of course, we would like to thank our sponsor, Tasweer, for media and production. And by this, we'll see you on another episode of Athar.